listeners. I am with Anton, founding director of Liftoff Consulting. How are you doing today, Anton?
Doing very well, thank you. It's great to
Um,
be here.
For a business owner who feels like they're just guessing with their marketing, what's the single most critical piece of data or insight they should be seeking out before they launch their next big campaign?
It's a great question. To be honest, I don't think there is one thing. It's always an ensemble of things that you want to be looking at. And fundamentally, what you need is a very clear map, compass, understanding where you are on that map and where you want to go, right? So not one thing. It's actually a combination of things. And I'm happy to elaborate on this. First of all, you got to be asking yourself sort of two questions. Where am I playing and where to play? And then once you identify very specific space where you're going to play, you then want to be answering, how you're going to win in this space. What is it I'm better at in this specific space that going to give me this competitive edge and drive my market share in this space? So really, for anybody who is doing guesswork, step number one is okay, well, let's spend some time in investing in deep understanding of the market we're in, dissect it in small pieces, identify our ideal targets, right? And from there on, we'll create a very deep understanding of these segments and identify what exactly we need to be saying, what our brand and com strategy should be for this specific segment, right? Or sub-segment. Now we're talking about micro segments. So yeah, Robert, back to you.
Yeah, so if you're just going to cast a wide net with a campaign, not only are you going to spend a tremendous amount of advertising dollars that really is just a waste of money, right? So the more you're able to focus in on, where you have interest, right? Get it as narrow as a focus, even go as far as a geo targeting type, right? The more
Mm,
information you can gather to help you be more specific on that campaign, the better off you're going to be. And really, it's your dollars that are going to be put to more use, right? So,
100%. To add one thing there is also to be very clear about what business objective you're trying to achieve with this campaign. At the heart of any marketing that you do, that you should have a very clear business objective. What are we doing? Are we driving penetration? Are we driving usage? Well, particularly when we're talking about B2C space. And depending on your business objective, you would have very different shape of the marketing campaign that you're putting out there. So there is this understanding who you're talking to, and then what belief or behavior you're trying to change within that very specific demand space, right? Which is type of your customer and an occasion that's relevant for them, that occasion that you're talking to them about, right? So there are two dimensions to this, I think.
it just really comes down to the data, right? You have to follow the data.
It is true. It is true.
And the more variables you can cover with that data, the better off you're going to be. You emphasize the importance of stakeholder understanding and addressing the marketing challenges. In your experience, what's the most common disconnect you see between company leadership?
Yeah, let me maybe start rewind a little bit, and probably it would be useful for our listeners and viewers to know what exactly we do, because it's a very niche thing that we specialize on. And then from there, I could maybe share my experience of working with various stakeholders. We are a growth consulting company with a very specific focus on advanced analytics and creating this bridge between advanced analytics and marketing science and finance. So making it practical in a boardroom, connecting to this ROI space with full capabilities of software engineering, right? So what we do is very specific. Now, when it comes to the challenges and disconnect between various stakeholders, I think is a very, very common challenge. Anybody in the business knows that the change is difficult. Fundamentally, an implementation of any strategy, you would have these communication challenges inevitably. Maybe even more so from my experience in Kantar, I did see that you often have large brands, insights team working really hard on something, right? They've created a vision, and then they share this vision with marketing team, but marketing team had its own vision already, so they would cherry pick some of the data points to build their case. So it evolves into something that wasn't originally planned, right? And then when it gets to creative teams, a lot of the strategy gets to the bin, and they do everything again from scratch. With large organizations, it is inevitable that you would lose some of the insights along the way. But on the other hand, the fact that you have that many eyes and that many perspectives on, the best way forward, I equally bring some strength to this strategy and creative strategy, etc.
Yeah,
Now,
I can see that. I can see that. Right? Leadership could fall in love with one concept and just be so focused on driving that message. And that message might not be what the data is showing is the best course of action, but they find themselves just so focused on that message and that effort that they ignore the surrounding noises, for lack of a better term. And
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
having more hands in the pot kind of, it kind of creates an environment where there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of understanding what different views are, and ultimately can end up in a much stronger campaign.
Yeah, you were just saying that there's in this type of environment there is a lot of give and take, and I couldn't agree more. Yeah, sometimes it gets very political. Certainly, it may get in the way of best possible outcomes. As a consultant, there are a number of things that I think absolutely critical to help companies to overcome these challenges. One is really active listening. It always comes back to absolute basics. Deeper understanding of the problems, a deeper understanding of what stakeholders actually need, and working around central question framework. These are critical success factors to at least to make sure that we are all on the same page and we know what exactly we're solving. And from my experience, the best work is all about co-creation.
Right.
So you have to bring all stakeholders on board at the right time, securing so-called. I'm not a huge fan of consulting jargon, but yeah, it's like so-called securing buy-in. Essentially, having the right people at the right time in the right place, and ensuring that this decision is collaborative decision rather than trying to land it when it's a lot of work is done and you left some people along the journey. Particularly relevant when there's a global piece of strategy that's being developed and then you don't bring the markets on board early enough,
Right.
right? That's a very classic disconnect. So I think most successful projects that I've been involved in at a big scale, right, and that was pre-Liftoff, really made sure that everybody's got their say and being heard when these big decisions are made. So yeah, active listening, central question, and ensuring that it's a co-creation and it's a journey that
Right.
everybody's got a say in.
Could you share with our listeners maybe a specific case study or demonstrate like a real world result where you guys were able to get your client the research that maybe they didn't have, and it led them to really successful growth? And I understand, you don't have to name names. I know there's a confidentiality thing there, but you could just explain to our listeners an example of where this research led to measurable growth.
Mm. It's a great question. I think to be honest, it's very rare that you'd have sort of one piece of research
No,
that
I understand. Yeah.
changes everything, right? It's it's usually you would refine existing maps. You know how we at the beginning we talked about like this. You need to have a map, and then you want to understand the direction. So it's rarely you build a map from scratch, particularly within FTSE 100 space. And a lot of these stories that you hear like on TED Talks or YouTube, where there's this great insight that turn everything upside down. I think it's great for storytelling, but it's often a gross exaggeration because really you're looking at a lot of symptoms to shape your strategy. But in terms of case studies, we are doing a lot of amazing work. Just recently, just today, I got an update. It's a fantastic work we're doing in financial service with financial service company, looking at a real-time analytics. There are great projects that we've delivered recently that help to resource and plan resources in the company. So with an ability to predict and run simulations. I guess one of the best and very dear to my heart pieces of work is actually building a capability within for innovation consulting company. And that
Mhm.
capability is opportunity sizing. So what they do, they work with large organizations like Unilevers and Danones of this world, and they help them innovate. But then when it comes to a specific innovation and idea, it's very difficult to understand, okay, what is the addressable market for this very idea? And is it worth a candle? And the capability that we've co-created with them, and that's I think the best choice of word, because there's a lot of work on their side, is doing exactly that, is helping to understand what is the value associated with this particular innovation, and is it worth the investment or not. Now when it comes to ROI, look, when it comes to this type of engagement with smaller companies, I think it's sort of very unfair to claim a specific ROI number. As I said, this is always a creation. When it comes to, I can give you an estimate, right? But it's a triple digit percentage growth
Right.
that's been enabled for them, unlocked because of this capability. But keep in mind, right? They have a development team. A lot of effort from co-founders and directors went into this. A lot of effort came from our side as well. So it's a truly co-creation project. So I wouldn't feel comfortable claiming that, okay, well we've done this and this is like now 800% or whatever.
Right. Right.
For someone who really knows how ROI is calculated and what it is and how difficult it is actually to pinpoint where it's coming from, because you have this short-term effects and long-term effects. It looks good on paper, but everybody who I think works with true ROI analytics knows that it's really difficult to estimate. But
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, it's triple percentages.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. It's kind of like the buzzword. Everyone looks at
Mhm.
ROI, right? But there's so much that goes into it, and I agree with you.
100%.
To claim that you've achieved this such a high percentage of growth is there's so many factors that go into it.
Yeah, including market factors,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Including the quality of
It's
product.
depending on what your campaign is, there's seasonality there, right? You perform better certain times of the year. So looking ahead in 2025, what's the biggest marketing challenge or opportunity you anticipate for businesses?
That's a good question. I don't think, although we live in an ever increasing speed of change, I think a lot of the
Especially
stuff is not new. Yeah, yeah, it is. I genuinely think that the new stuff is really well forgotten old stuff. We talked a lot about finding growth in uncomfortable places.
now.
I think there's a lot more of it now, right? There's so much more competition. There's so much more um, agility in the market that you've got to be you got to adapt really quickly, and you got to be finding these like smaller pockets of growth, um,
Hmm.
and no longer the marketing from 90s or 2000s work, because it was just not precise enough. And these big trends everybody's talking about, personalization is one of them, is relevant as never. And again, bringing this back to the map we discussed at the beginning, is really understanding these micro segments and micro opportunities. That's something that can enable sustainable growth, right? For particularly for large players.
Hmm.
And look, another big thing, of course, is AI, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's got a crystal ball. Nobody knows how exactly it's going to play out. But one thing is certain, that it's sort of a competition. How well can you harness this phenomenon of intelligence democratization? I think that's how I would call it. It's not just AI, right? It's information and intelligence becoming a lot more accessible, and just because there's more sources, and it's easier to get your hands on the data. So It's a big question, big business question. How do you live in this new world? How do you harness this power?
Has it changed your outlook? I mean, you obviously use AI, but does it have you really thinking about how you need to incorporate it at a much larger scale?
Yes, certainly. What we do as at Liftoff is only possible
Yeah,
because of AI,
right, right.
right? Because we could leverage, and I can see the growth of AI first companies, which is fantastic. And it did change my outlook. Right? We humans tend to really overestimate how much we can do in a short period of time and really underestimate how much we can do in a long period of time. What I feel, and you probably heard a lot about the fears in the market about like AI bubble and where this is all going. Well, is Nvidia is overpriced, and if it's going to have an impact, like a really negative impact across the whole market. Because if you think about like FTSE 100, any index these days, right, probably a quarter would be AI companies and AI stocks. So it's a big chunk.
I think depending on the markets, wherever you are in the world, it's technology that's driving the numbers, at least now.
Mm. So the point I'm making is, like, it feels like we are struggling to deliver in a short run, like in a short
Mhm.
term, and a lot of investments that's been made top down at institutional level are not paying off just yet. You've seen that's why all big AI transformation projects are kind of failing. And that's inevitable because it requires a very different way of thinking and transformation at an incredible speed that large organizations I don't think are capable of. But at the same time, I see a lot of success stories where the with tech first or AI first companies, and not because they could replace humans with AI, because they found a better model how to empower humans to do their job better. And I don't think we're at a stage where we can be replacing real employees, but we can give them a lot of support and remove some unnecessary frictions along the way to empower them. So I never fully believed in self-service, right? Self-service dashboards. So it used to be trend, particularly during COVID time, right? Well, the fastest growing companies were just doing that, collecting data and giving this data to the clients. But I don't think this model works, and I don't think it worked. There is a lot of demand for consulting work for this very reason. You need to have some sort of an oil connection, just something called last mile, right? In delivery, it's also last mile in consulting that unfortunately dashboards and AI cannot do just now, and that's why you need people who are sort of bridging this gap. So yeah, does this answer your question?
Well, you kind of
I went on a run a little bit there.
no, no, that's great. That's great. That's what makes quality content. You had a point in there that I agree with wholeheartedly. It's this combination of apprehension, which is brought on by the lack of understanding when it comes to AI. AI is not a tool that you're just going to let loose and they're going to do everything. AI, in its most powerful form, is a tool that someone like yourself, myself, or someone in business that uses to help them gather information faster, do their job more effectively, and be able to do more of their job in less time. It's a tool like a carpenter uses a hammer or a saw. And that's, I believe, where at least we're going to see companies that are able to incorporate that mindset as using it as a tool to help them be better, faster, more efficient are the companies that are going to succeed. It's not something like you said you're just going to implement, set it free, and look at it once a week because it's not what it is, at least at this point in our
Yeah,
lives.
building
And
on that.
I don't think you have a risk of robots coming into your home and fixing your plumbing or right an AI bot running accounting right for a company. It's just
Pr-
it's just
Probably
that's
not. Probably not. Not in the next 5 or so years. building on what you said is I see sort of a lot of disconnect with thinking about AI as sort of a virtual employees, whereas
Mhm.
there's a big misunderstanding in this idea. From my experience, LLMs and any sort of AI technology is surprisingly bad at some things that humans are good at, and surprisingly good at something that humans are pretty bad at on average. And this disconnect is so big that you have to organize your systems, your business processes in a very particular way that harnesses the strength of AI, right? But then compensates the huge weaknesses and liabilities that come with it. And in in my experience with companies that we work with, AI is definitely not a solution 100% of time. We should be starting with business objectives and what we're trying to achieve, and then finding the best tool for it. Sometimes it can be agentic workflow, but quite often it's not. Maybe you need another employee, or maybe you need to change your process, or maybe you need to rethink a strategy. So keeping that in mind is yeah, it's not that simple. It's not that simple.
And it goes down to, like, how you prompt it different ways, you get different answers, right? You know,
Mm,
the risk there is, and I see this in the younger generation, kids coming up today. They can't get their face out from in front of their phones or their tablets, and they're actually believing everything that comes through social media as truth and factual. I think we're growing a generation that doesn't have the ability to step back and form their own opinion, right? And be able to think through the information that they're seeing. And I think we run the risk again with AI is it can become a tool that people rely on because it's so easy and so fast. But in actuality,
mm.
some of the data you're getting might not be right for the situation that you're asking it to do. I mean, because AI it's out there combing all the information that's out on the World Wide Web. Right?
Yeah, and it's still the hallucination problem is not solved, right? Still, in almost quarter to 15% of times, right, the answers are not reliable. And
Mhm.
despite the latest research by Anthropics, it seemed like they figured it out, but that they didn't, right? And even solutions they suggest in their paper. Actually, I just came back from a conference and spoke with people who actually tried to implement the solution, how to limit hallucinations, but based on Anthropic's recommendation is, there's this I think that they suggest to do is to ask how confident you are in your response, enabling AI to say, I don't know. And that's one of the main reasons why hallucinations are happening. And in practice, this advice unfortunately does not work yet. So it
Yeah.
will take a few generation of models when we can actually crack that problem, and there's no guarantee that it's solvable at this stage.
Right.
So even just that, right? The statistics like from 15% of hallucinations to sometimes 25, depending on what tasks are involved, really prompt you to build very sophisticated systems that do use double checking or human in the loop or asking another LM to validate, etc., etc. But you can't just let it run loose. You can't expect amazing results straight away. And to your point about generation, yes, they're genuinely concerned for me. I don't have kids yet, but thinking about my childhood and looking at the new generation, it is it is hard to imagine what's happening with dopamine receptors, right? When you're
Yeah.
constantly bombarded by this flashy content, AI generated, and we definitely already entering this post-truth era where you can't trust anything you see on a screen.
Or
It's
listen on TV for that matter. The news
yeah,
today
yeah.
is
As a matter
it's
of fact,
it's almost unwatchable. Like, what you're going to see depending on what sorry, not see. You know what you're going to hear depending on what channel you're listening to, and it's like, come on. It's like,
yeah,
I don't want your
yeah. Oh,
opinion.
don't get me started.
I just want facts. I want facts. Tell me what's actually happening. I don't care what you think. So yeah, it's gotten really bad.
There
Um,
are a lot of great initiatives that could help to leverage AI to actually, validate and do some fact checking. But I'm yet to see the results, right? I'm yet to see
Yeah.
the impact. Hopefully, we'll see it at some point.
The other thing here, the governments of the world still, they still have to put framework around this technology, right? And because it's kind of, I mean, although AI has been around a long time, it's really, I looked at COVID, or I should say, sized up COVID as being the catalyst to the biggest technological boom this world has ever seen. I mean, so much bigger than the
Mm.
dot-com war in the '90s. So, there's a lot of work the governments of the world need to do to put frameworks around this technology. Elon Musk said not too long ago he believes, you get further enough down the road, AI is going to be put into have this country into a situation where there's going to be universal income, right? Because the opportunity for our younger generations coming up, there's going to be much fewer jobs. Now, whether I truly don't believe we're ever going to see that in our lifetime. Does it get there? It's not inconceivable. But I also think this AI boom is also going to create other industries, right? It's going to create other opportunities. Just that standard. My parents grew up, went to college, worked for the same company for 30 years.
Mm.
And even in my lifetime, I kind of did the same thing. But I see kids today that they jump, they've had 4 or 5 different jobs over the course of 10 years. So, it's human pattern and technologies has always evolved and it's always created the climate that we currently live in. And it's just fascinating. I love asking the question. I love seeing, people's take on it because it's here and it's here to stay. And I think, as we said earlier, companies that embrace it and put it in its proper place and use it as a tool, we'll see tremendous growth. And the
This
people
is
that
really well put.
and the people that don't, unfortunately, their businesses are probably going to cease to exist because I don't care, what area of expertise you're in. If your competitor is doing it faster, better, and more efficient, right? Efficiency is time. Time is money. And your competitor is going to be able to produce something that ultimately bears higher margins for their company, even allowing them to lower their pricing because they are so efficient, is going to have a real world impact.
To build on that, I generally think that there will be a huge redistribution of resources that's inevitably coming, driven by this technology, and guarantee the capital will have the most uplift from this and see the biggest upside from this redistribution, as it's easier to generate more cash flows when you have a lot of cash. That said, in this big redistribution, there will be and there are amazing opportunities that, if missed, can lead to, I think, really, really poor results. It is really time to future proof your companies, your strategies, your income streams. Inevitably, as soon as intelligence democratized, we will see higher levels of unemployment. And already now, there's a lot of data that clearly demonstrates the impact. So I've done this talk about AI. There's an interesting stat I've seen in MIT research where it's like, I think is it MIT or McKinsey? Well, it doesn't matter. The point is like we already see like for like 17% decline in recruitment in sectors that are heaviest, that use AI a lot more than others. So when we're talking about sales and marketing, we see this huge decline when we compare things like for like, and especially the people who are affected are 20 to 25-year olds. Right,
Yeah.
so we see the slight shift. These numbers are not very big right now, but what will be happening is that companies will stop hiring junior personnel because now it can be replaced, partially replaced by AI.
Yeah. It's those
And
entry level positions that are going to have to.
exactly, and but it will inevitably lead to a cliff edge at some point. Not right now, and that's what's concerning. That we're not going to see the effects straight away. There will be a delayed effect, but at some point it will be everybody's going to notice it,
Yeah.
and then it will be kind of too late to fix it.
Yeah. And like you see, and it kind of created, nervousness, or I don't want to say hysteria, that's too strong a word. Amazon laid off 14,000 people, right?
Mm.
Well, if you take a look at where they laid those people off in distribution facilities, assembly line, right? Me looking at it, of course they're going to make that move. AI can do it much more efficient. And it's unfortunate for those people that lost their jobs, but this is where, just like in, you can you can go back in history and you can identify times this has happened and what was created because of it. You hate to see people lose their jobs, but at the end of the day, we all have to, reinvent ourselves in one way or another, right? You got to wake up and put your boots on one foot at a time and move forward.
Yeah, Robert, humanity have been through this process of modernization many times. I
Yeah.
think the big difference this time around is that we already have an infrastructure in place. So if you think about industrial revolution, a
Right.
lot of jobs being created for building the infrastructure, right? And that provided a transition period
Well, we're seeing that
for.
today too, right? In the trades, because we have to be able to build facilities that are able to power the AI, right? And factories,
That is
right?
that is true. That is true. But is this going to be enough? Are these facilities going to provide enough jobs for everybody who is losing their job because of AI? I don't think so. I think there will
No, but
be
it
a
did
gap.
bolster. Yeah, it did bolster a sector, though, right? The trades have
Mm,
never been had more interest and more participation in them, at least in the past 30 years, because that's maybe something that A is needed to be able to build the infrastructure to support the AI growth. But it's also something that's one of, there's no risk of, AI robots coming in and doing that work. So anytime soon. This isn't a Ford motor plant, right? An assembly line where robots are doing a specific task. So I do see that.
yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a little bit premature to paint these post-apocalyptic pictures, but there are already early symptoms to be concerned about.
All right. So we'll transition. We could talk about that forever.
Yeah.
All right, for our listeners, for businesses that know they need strategic support but aren't sure where to start, what does the initial conversation or consultation look with you guys?
Well, look, it's really us listening and the businesses sharing what challenges they have, and for us to have a productive conversation to see whether we can help or not. Probably not the best fit for every single organization out there, but then when it comes to a great match where we can really add value to the business, it becomes very clear during this first consultation. So yeah, to answer your question, is asking a lot of questions, and the client, potential client or prospect, is answering these questions, and then we see whether there is an overlap and how we can help.
Mhm. All right. Well, this was a great conversation, Anton. It's going to make great content for people to listen to. And I thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Robert. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.